G'day cocktail lovers, hope you've been keeping well. Hope you're ready for another cocktail. This one is a riff on one of my favorites. So I was scanning various websites looking for inspiration for what could I make for the channel. I saw a list of riffs on Sazerac. Sazerac's a very old school cocktail, one of my favorites. Look, it's essentially, it's basically an old fashioned with an absinthe rinse. Sometimes it's made with rye whiskey, sometimes it's made with bourbon, sometimes it's made with cognac, and sometimes there's a split base, which is the case in this version. But I looked down this list of variants of the Sazerac, and there was a couple that caught my eye. I'm going to make one of them now, and the main variant from a traditional Sazerac is some banana liqueur. And hence this has been coined the Bananarac. I can't decide whether that's a clever name or a terrible name. It's one of those funny things. It's like Bananarac, is that clever or stupid? I'm honestly not sure. You can let me know if you think that's clever or stupid, because I think it's existing in this limbo between the two. But I'm going to make that for you now. A classic, a riff on a classic New Orleans drink, the Sazerac. This one is the Bananarac. The first thing I'm going to do is get my absinthe rinse ready. There's a couple ways you can have the little notes of absinthe in a Sazerac. Some people put the absinthe in an atomizer and spritz the inside of their glass. Traditional way is put a little bit of absinthe in the glass, let it coat it, make the rest of the drink, then tip the absinthe out and put the drink in, so there's just a little bit of absinthe left. I shan't be wasting the absinthe, I shall be pouring it into a little shot glass so I can have a shot as a chaser. But you only need a little bit. It's basically like a bar spoon, like 5 mils, a really small amount. So while I've got my ice chilling my glass, I'm going to coat it with just a little splash of absinthe, and I'll set the glass aside while I make the cocktail. As I mentioned, this recipe splits the base between rye whiskey and what's armanac rather than cognac. The most common versions of a Sazerac have either rye whiskey or cognac or a split. This one's a little bit different. It says do a split of some rye whiskey and some armanac. I'm actually going to use an Australian rye whiskey, A, because I have it, I love to support local, and B, because it's really good. Archie Rose's rye malt whiskey, but by all means go with the rye whiskey or even the bourbon that you have handy, and we're going to go 1 ounce or 30 mils of the whiskey. By sheer coincidence, I actually have the exact armanac that was recommended in this recipe, which is a really, to me, just a weird chance. I literally got this because it was what was on hand in the bottle shop. Chateau de Tarquier VSOP armanac. But again, like I said, use by all means cognac, or even, look, just a brandy, honestly. They're all brandies, just made in different parts of the world. But just because I had the exact one they mentioned on the recipe, I'm going to use it. So it'll be 1 ounce, 30 mils of the armanac. Now for the main variant in this version of the Sazerac, the banana, giving it its Bananarac name. But we're just going to do 1/2 ounce or 15 mils of banana liqueur. There's also a little sweetener in this drink. Some people will actually use sugar, like maybe 1/2 teaspoon of really fine grained sugar. Otherwise you can use a sugar syrup. If you have like a strong sugar syrup, like a Demerara sugar syrup or something made with brown sugar, that could potentially go quite well here. I'm using just a simple sugar syrup that I made, 50% sugar, 50% water. And again, I'm going to be really precise. I've got a small teaspoon. I'm just going to do about 1/2 that teaspoon. So you want sort of less than 5 mils of the sugar syrup, just a hint of sweetness. The final touch is some bitters. It's quite traditional with the Sazerac to use a Creole style bitters like Peychaud's, but don't be shy, don't be afraid to experiment and try another sort of bitters if you like, or even just what you have on hand. If all you have is your traditional Angostura aromatic bitters, go for that. But like I said, traditionally it would be a Creole style bitters like Peychaud's, and we're going to go 2 dashes of bitters. This is a stirred cocktail, so we add a bunch of ice to our glass, and stir. I've got Gaz Regan's finger. Feel free to use a spoon if you don't have a handy finger. Unless you're using overproof spirits in here, there's no real need to stir for a really long time. A little bit of dilution because it's a fairly boozy drink. Get it nice and chilled. That bit of ice was meant to be out of the glass. And yeah, about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. That's a good amount of stirring. Now I need to drain off my absinthe rinse with the absinthe and a little bit of water added from the melted ice. It's going to be a shot to be a chaser. And I will now swap around where the Hawthorn strainer is and put that into our rocks glass with a nice clear piece of ice. And there we go. That is a really nice colour. Just the whiskey, the armanac, the banana liqueur, and the Peychaud's bitters. If nothing else, I think Peychaud's bitters makes this drink a better colour than Angostura, for instance, would. But as I said, go with what you have. But now it's time to taste the Bananarac. That is quite interesting. That split base of the rye and the armagnac is because rye is a bit spicier generally than a bourbon is. And even with just that rinse of absinthe, there's a real aniseed on the mouth, which is like the signature of a Sazerac. The banana actually isn't coming that forward. There is a little bit of it. What I like about a Sazerac is it's a reasonably complex cocktail, even if the ingredients are pretty simple. Even if you just went with rye alone or cognac alone, it still brings out a few different things when you add the sweetener and the bitters. And then with that little bit of the banana liqueur, there's this banana sweetness. For me, it's like right at the end of a mouthful. Yeah, it's not, for me at least, it is not that hugely removed from a traditional Sazerac. It's certainly different. There's that little bit extra sweetness and there's that slight banana flavour, because we've only put half an ounce of the banana liqueur in. It doesn't get to dominate. It just like plays in the background with the more dominant flavours of the brandy and the whiskey. So overall, this is a really interesting variation on a Sazerac. And actually, I have to admit, something I've done a lot just playing around with simple cocktails, classic cocktails like a Sazerac or an old-fashioned that have just got simple elements. Sometimes just adding half an ounce of a fruit liqueur or a fruit brandy just brings that little bit extra in. So I thoroughly recommend playing with this. Maybe you don't have banana liqueur. I think this made with maybe a splash of apple brandy, something like Calvados or Applejack could bring an interesting element in as well. But this is a good example of why you should experiment with your drinks, because you never know what will come out of it. For me, this doesn't take a Sazerac to a magical new level. It's an interesting variation of it. It's not something I'll necessarily do a lot of, but it's opened that door. I thought, oh, but what would happen if I did a Sazerac but with this fruit flavour in, or with this fruit flavour in? So never be scared to experiment. That's my motto. Well, I hope you enjoyed exploring that Sazerac variation with me. I'd be interested to hear if you have any little riffs on classic cocktails. And hey, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, it'd be great if you did subscribe. Hit the little notification bell so you know when I upload videos, and I will be back again soon. It'd be great to have you along on my cocktail journey, share some thoughts with me. But in the meantime, I hope you look after yourself, look after the people around you, and I hope to see you again soon. Until then, cheers.